Imagine for a moment the sound of morning. In a small apartment in New York City, a machine hisses and drips. In a bustling street market in Istanbul, a copper pot clinks against a stove. In a quiet kitchen in Tokyo, a kettle whistles. These are different sounds, in different places, spoken by different cultures. Yet they all say the exact same thing. The day has begun. We often think of coffee as just a beverage, a dark, bitter liquid we drink to wake up. But if you look closer, you will see that it is much more than that. Coffee is the fuel of modern civilization. It is the silent partner in almost every great human achievement of the last 500 years. It was present when scientists discovered gravity, it was there when philosophers wrote about freedom, and it is likely sitting on your desk right now as you learn and work. Every single day, humanity consumes over 2 billion cups of this magic liquid. It is the second most traded commodity on Earth, surpassed only by crude oil. Think about that comparison. Oil powers our machines. Coffee powers our minds. But the most incredible part of this story is not how popular coffee is today. It is how unlikely its journey was. This global giant did not start in a laboratory or a royal palace. It started in a remote forest with a confused shepherd and a flock of energetic goats. Today on Hello Daily English, we are going to trace the invisible line that connects a red berry in Africa to the mug in your hand. This is a story of smuggled seeds, religious bans, ocean voyages, and the revolution of human thought. So, pour yourself a fresh cup, sit back, and let's drink in the history. This is the story of the awakening. To understand the power of coffee, we must first understand the world before coffee. If you could travel back in time to Europe in the Middle Ages, you would notice something very strange about the people. They were almost always slightly drunk. In those days, water was dangerous. Rivers and wells were often polluted with bacteria that could kill you. To survive, people drank liquids that were fermented because the alcohol killed the germs. Even for breakfast, the average person would drink weak beer or watered-down wine. Imagine starting your workday with a glass of beer. Now imagine an entire society doing that. For centuries, the human mind was in a constant chemical fog. It was a depressant. It slowed down reaction times, dulled sharp thoughts, and encouraged relaxation rather than innovation. Humanity was literally waiting for a stimulant. They needed something that was safe to drink, like beer, but that sharpened the mind instead of dulling it. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in the Horn of Africa, nature had already created the solution. In the ancient forests of Ethiopia, the Oromo people had known about the energy berry for centuries. They would crush the red cherries and mix them with animal fat to make primitive energy bars for long treks. But the secret of roasting and brewing, the alchemy that turns a bitter seed into a delicious drink, was still locked away, waiting to be discovered. The legend of how we unlocked that secret is one of history's favorite stories. It takes place around the year 850 AD. High in the Ethiopian mountains, there was a goat herd named Kaldi. Kaldi was a simple man who knew the rhythm of the forest and the habits of his animals. One afternoon, Kaldi panicked. His goats, usually calm and docile, had vanished. When he finally found them, he couldn't believe his eyes. The goats were not eating or sleeping. They were dancing. They were jumping off rocks, bleating loudly, and running in circles with endless energy. Even the oldest, slowest goat was prancing like a baby. Kaldi looked closer and saw they were stripping bright red berries from a glossy green bush. Driven by curiosity and perhaps a little hunger, Kaldi tried the berries himself. Within minutes, his heart began to beat faster. The fog in his brain lifted. He felt a sudden, intense clarity. The tiredness of the day vanished. He began to dance with his goats. Excited by this magic fruit, Kaldi ran to a local monastery to share his discovery. He presented the berries to the head monk, explaining their power. But the monk was horrified. He believed this unnatural energy could only be a trick of the devil. In a fit of fear, the monk threw the bright red berries into the fire to destroy them. But as the berries burned, the seeds inside began to roast. A scent unlike anything they had ever smelled before drifted through the monastery. It was rich, earthy, and chocolatey. It was the smell of fresh coffee. Entranced by the aroma, the monks raked the roasted beans from the fire, crushed them, and mixed them with hot water to save them. They tasted the dark liquid. That night, for the first time in history, the monks did not fall asleep during their midnight prayers. They stayed awake, their minds sharp and focused on God. They realized this was not a curse, but a gift. The age of caffeine had begun. From Ethiopia, the beans crossed the Red Sea into Yemen. This is where coffee met cultivation. It was here in the Arab world that coffee found its true name and its true purpose. They called it kahwa, a word that was originally used for wine. But this was a different kind of wine. It was the wine of Islam. Since alcohol was forbidden in the Islamic faith, coffee became the perfect alternative. By the 15th century, coffee had moved out of the mosques and into the streets. In bustling cities like Cairo, Mecca, and Constantinople, a new type of building appeared, the kahve khans, or coffee houses. We cannot overstate how revolutionary this was. Before coffee houses, people only gathered in two places, at home, which was private, or at a place of worship, which was silent and respectful. The coffee house was something new. It was public, it was loud, and it was open to everyone. For the price of a single cup, a merchant could sit next to a scholar, a poet could argue with a politician. These places became known as the schools of the wise. Information flew across the tables faster than ever before. News, rumors, and revolutionary ideas were fueled by the dark, energetic liquid. But not everyone loved this new social network. Rulers and religious leaders became nervous. They saw people gathering, talking fast, and debating politics late into the night. In 1511, the governor of Mecca tried to ban coffee. He claimed it was intoxicating and dangerous to social order. He ordered coffee stalks to be burned in the streets. But it was too late. You could burn the beans, but you couldn't untaste the energy. The people revolted against the ban, and eventually the Sultan himself intervened to save coffee. The drink had become too powerful.
As the 17th century arrived, Italian merchants began bringing sacks of these strange, dark beans into Venice. The smell of roasting coffee began to waft through the canals of Europe. But once again, fear stood in the way. Traditional priests in Rome were suspicious. They called coffee the bitter invention of Satan because it came from the Islamic world. They urged Pope Clement VIII to forbid Christians from drinking it. They wanted a total ban. The story goes that the Pope, being a wise man, decided he could not ban something he had never tasted. He asked for a warm cup. He took a sip, then another. He paused, smiled, and allegedly said, "This devil's drink is so delicious we should cheat the devil by baptizing it." With the Pope's blessing, the floodgates opened. Coffee swept across Europe, and it arrived at the perfect time. The Age of Enlightenment was just beginning. Think about the contrast. For centuries, Europeans started the day with beer. Now, suddenly, they were starting the day with caffeine. The societal impact was immediate. In London, coffee houses became known as penny universities. For a penny, you could buy a cup of coffee and sit for hours listening to the smartest people in the city. The London Stock Exchange began in a coffee house. The insurance giant Lloyd's of London began in a coffee house. In France, the philosophers Voltaire and Rousseau drank endless cups of coffee while planning the ideas that would lead to the French Revolution. It is no coincidence that the explosion of science, democracy, and capitalism happened at the exact same moment Europe switched from a depressant, alcohol, to a stimulant, coffee. The human brain literally woke up. By the 1700s, coffee was the most desired luxury in the world. But there was a problem. The Arabs, wanting to protect their monopoly, refused to sell live seeds.
They would boil or roast the beans before selling them so no one else could grow a coffee tree. But nature and human greed always finds a way. The Dutch managed to smuggle a few live seedlings out of Yemen and transported them to their colonies in Java and Indonesia. Soon, the Dutch were gifting coffee trees to kings across Europe. One of the most dramatic stories of coffee's expansion involves a French naval officer named Gabriel de Clieu. He was stationed in the Caribbean island of Martinique, and he was convinced that the Caribbean climate was perfect for growing coffee. He managed to acquire a tiny coffee seedling from the king's garden in Paris. His voyage back to the Americas was a nightmare. The ship was attacked by pirates, nearly sinking in a storm. Then the water supply on the ship ran low. Passengers were given only half a cup of water a day. De Clieu was so dedicated to his mission that he gave half of his own water ration to the little plant. He stayed thirsty so the coffee could survive. His sacrifice changed the world. That single plant survived the journey. De Clieu planted it in the rich soil of Martinique, and he guarded it day and night with a thorn hedge. From that one survivor, 18 million coffee trees grew over the next 50 years. It is said that almost all of the coffee plants in the Americas today, from the vast fields of Brazil to the mountains of Colombia, are descendants of that one thirsty little plant that crossed the ocean. As the centuries rolled on, coffee evolved. In 1901, an Italian inventor figured out how to use high pressure to force water through tightly packed beans, creating a concentrated shot of coffee. The espresso was born, and with it, the speed of modern life. Then came the World Wars, where soldiers needed caffeine that was easy to carry. This demand gave us instant coffee, turning the ritual into a purely functional tool for energy. But today, we have come full circle. We are in the era of the third wave. We treat coffee like wine. We care about the soil it grew in, the altitude of the mountain, and the name of the farmer who picked it. We have returned to appreciating the art of the bean, just like the Sufi monks did 1,000 years ago. It is fascinating to think that this simple seed has shaped our world so completely. It built the economies of nations like Brazil and Vietnam. It fueled the Industrial Revolution. It creates the spaces where we meet our friends, conduct our job interviews, and write our novels. So, the next time you walk into a coffee shop, look around. Look at the people talking, typing, and thinking. Smell that roasted aroma that has not changed in 10 centuries. You are participating in a ritual that is older than most countries. From the dancing goats of Ethiopia to the porcelain cups of Paris, and finally to your favorite mug at home, coffee has been the faithful companion to human history. It reminds us that sometimes we just need a little spark, a little warmth to wake up and change the world. Thank you for watching this journey into the history of coffee. We hope it makes your next cup taste just a little bit richer. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe to Hello Daily English for more deep dives into the history behind your daily life. Until next time, stay curious and stay awake.